I am filming this week's video thanks to Jenna. Seriously, I have like 3 different types of product in my hair, and yet it's like, hi, I'm from the 70s. I will probably need disclaimers all over this video because, well, this is the raw truth. I have zero interest in lying. I think it's just one more thing I have to think about. I mean, it's hard enough remembering the damn shopping list I left on the kitchen bench again, which also means I have to edit the crap out of my videos because I tend to also be very non-PC in my head at least half of the time. So I heavily edit my videos. Sometimes my brain to mouth filter glitches out and then I realize, oh, I trigger somebody without a spine like that. Yep, there we go again. Can you hear that? It was like cockatoo in the background. Yep. Obviously, this isn't medical advice. I'm sharing what has worked for me personally. You're free to go and spend $200 on a nutritionist or a dietitian for advice. Oh, that's literally how much it costs in Sydney. I promise I'm not going to sell you some freaking protein powder promising that you're going to lose weight. They're using it and then spamming you with my affiliate links. Looking back now, I can see the patterns. They're really clues along the way as to how I gain the weight, and they're also the clues as to the answers of how to lose the weight. I can say this now because I've lost it, so I would recommend tracking your life patterns and be really kind to yourself when you do this, especially women. Like, we're so hard on ourselves. Treat it like more of a discovery or an investigation process rather than beating yourself up about. Nobody consciously says to themselves, when I grow up, I'm going to be the stressed out sole income earner, free child caregiver, free house cleaner, free family caregiver and social worker, basically a free doormat. Nobody grows up saying that to themselves or planning that consciously, but these patterns are indicative of the subconscious, I guess, and I believe that that has something to do with why we gain body fat. I'm talking about unhealthy body fat. I realized my weight gain really came down to 2 reasons. 1, I wasn't happy, and 2, I was really stressed out, which is probably the same as being not happy, but I worked really hard as a lawyer. And for those who haven't watched my previous video on why I quit the law, do check it out if you feel interested. But it explains a lot of why I was really stressed out and unhappy. My private life, well, that was also a complete mess. Sometimes life, you need to have a brick thrown at your head by life in order to get the relationship lesson. That was also something that was going on at the same time. It's like, you can't just have one problem. No, we need 5. The way my life was run was pretty much, all that mattered was that you brought in results. It was very mission and goal oriented. All that mattered was that you hit your targets, that you achieve in life. And this might be familiar to a number of you. I was raised in an environment where it was all about what you did. It was nothing to do with how you looked. I wasn't even told that I was pretty. It was more of a case of, what are you doing? Are you digging trenches? That's it. That was basically my value, is how much I did. So that translated really well into the corporate world, where you're valued according to what you give, how much you do, how much you achieve, how much results you bring in. It's nothing to do with, who cares if you're not happy? Who cares if you're miserable, you're not fit, your health is suffering, your mental and emotional well-being is going to the dumpster. I mean, because that's a whole other video. Happiness is not even part of the job. It's just grind it out. So I gained weight. Firstly, the mental. You might have heard in certain psychology circles the away from motivation and the toward motivation. Away motivation is great for short-term goals, such as, I got to get away from the tiger that's chasing me. It's high stress, it's good in the short term. Toward motivation is great in the long term. So if you're aiming to achieve something like, I want to feel healthier, I want to have vitality in my body. I was definitely in the first category as my motivation for losing weight. it was very dramatic. It hit me all of a sudden. And back in the 2000s, there was no Instagram. It wasn't even in existence back then. I think Instagram kicked in about 2010. So I didn't have my day filled with depression scrolling on endless pictures of filtered 19-year-olds with six packs, selling me a protein powder, bending over in spandex. In a way, I was grateful for that, but also I just had no information about fitness and health in general. And when you're in a corporate environment, nobody is doing the health thing. It's just all about pumping out work. So your health is your problem, is how it is. Weight doesn't pop on overnight. When I first hit a size 14 Australian, I thought that they had changed the categorization in Australia for size 14. I thought maybe the label was wrong. And it wasn't until then I started hitting a size 16 and I realized, wow, okay, maybe I'm putting on weight, and I started not fitting into the size 16 clothes. And I tried taking a photo of myself to try and look nice, and I wasn't happy with any of the photos that I took. It's like no angle was making me feel like good about myself. And that was really when something snapped inside of me. I didn't feel good about myself. I was disappointed and I really hated myself. Not like overall, but just hated that I allowed myself to be trampled all over by my work life, stressing me out. Hated that I wasn't prioritizing my own health. I bought into the idea that achievements were more important than being well and feeling healthy. I think I'm being visited by a bird. So I really had that snap in my mind. It was painful. This is extreme. I did not stop eating, okay? So this is not that extreme. It's just more, it was very simple, but it worked. It was also a time when I had no clue about, calories, what things were, macros, ratios, fats, protein, carbs. So I decided if I had put the weight on by stress and food, I needed to take the weight off by non-stress and non-food. Doesn't mean starvation. I did not starve myself. I ate food. It was just a different pattern, and probably in hindsight a little extreme, but again, I was motivated by, this has got to stop. I'm done with feeling this way. And so I burnt the bridge to everything. I literally ended my relationship, which was no good for me. I ended my career, which was no good for me. And I broke the pattern of how I was eating. But I think it's a combination of all of those things. It's not a matter of just eat and overtrain yourself at the gym, because if you're not happy, your hormones are going to be so messed up. The stress is going to keep that fat on there. I really do believe we need more education around hormones, not just food and exercise, or heaven forbid supplements. Like protein powders are being pumped out to the mouth. I'm like, no, stop. So I stripped my pantry of all the food, stripped the fridge of everything in it, donated that, and I went out and only got lettuce, mayonnaise, mayo, wraps, and baked beans, the tin, the home brand, like the freaking, I was extreme, okay? I was done, I had enough. Remember, I had no clue about calories and macros, and it was probably a really good thing, because if I had overthought it and was doing all those diets that are recommended by 50 different doctors that are all conflicting with each other, which is what we have now, a situation where we have so much information and doctors are on Instagram and one person saying carbs are bad, one person saying carbs are good, and you just don't even know what to eat anymore. Even water's become controversial. It was probably good that I just did my thing, and it worked, and it stayed off, which is the important part. At that time, I was newly single, I was living in my apartment, and I decided that I was going to rent out the spare room to international travelers. So I ended up renting it out to this wonderful man from France who was coming to Australia to study engineering at the Queensland University. And I noticed at night time, he would just eat lettuce with balsamic vinegar drizzled over the top of it. And because I had no clue about things, and I was just seeing him do that, and I thought, okay, well, he's skinny. I want to be that, put two and two together. So for dinner, I started just having lettuce as much as I wanted to feel full, with mayonnaise dripped onto it for flavoring. For lunch, I would have, sometimes for variety, I would have a half a tin of the large baked beans. And oh gosh, I decided not to stop until I saw progress. I did not weigh myself on a scale at all. I considered my measure of success was going to be my clothes and how they fit on me. I will not stop until I got back to at least a size 14. Now, all of this time, I did not go to the gym. I didn't do any dedicated exercise. I restricted it just to food only. That's all I changed. Was it simple? Yes, absolutely. It couldn't be much simpler. You didn't even have to cook. Was it easy? Well, the first few days, it was pretty easy. I was okay. After the first week, I started feeling pretty sad. It must have been about a month. I remember this moment specifically because it was so emotionally varied. I was so miserable at one point. I remember sitting on the apartment floor in the lounge room, crying from feeling so miserable. When choices are taken away, your mind starts feeling miserable thoughts. I wasn't starving, especially by poor country standards. What I was eating would be a luxury, and it was a mental thing. It was because I didn't have the choice. I wasn't able to eat what I wanted to eat. Hear that key word, what I wanted. So it was an emotional connection I had with food. And I got really tired of eating the same thing. So at one point, so that I wouldn't give up, I added a little bit of tuna, the spring water tuna, or a boiled egg instead of baked beans, or instead of just being lettuce. And the weight just kept coming off. So it got to about, I think, the 3-month mark, but I was back to size 14 and I was still continuing to lose the weight. One of the other benefits too is that you save a lot of money when you're not spending it on groceries. And my bills must have been, I think, around $30 a week, and that included things like detergent. It's one thing to remove the weight, it's another thing to keep it off, and I've kept it off for over 10 years. I'm currently a size 12 Australian, and sometimes I'm a little bit less than that. Like, it depends on the cut of clothing as well, really depends. I'm almost 6 foot tall, so it gives you an idea of like my height. I'm definitely not like skinny mini at all. I'm quite an athletic build, and that's just where my body naturally sits. But in order to keep the weight off, I had to make something permanent happen. You can't go back to the same habits that you had before, whether it's your relationship, your job, the way you're eating. It has to be a permanent change, and so that's what I did. Well, I moved to Melbourne and I had a new job, new life, getting out of the state where everything was getting up. And then I went vegan for 2 years. And I did a lot of research, make sure that I was receiving all my nutritional benefits like B12 and iron and things like that. Didn't really work well for my body. I felt bloated all the time. I wasn't eating bread. I went pretty much gluten-free. So it wasn't like I'm binging on bread and fries and, you know, all that stuff and doing a terrible vegan thing. It just didn't quite work for me. I think I even gained a little bit, like just from the bloating. Then I moved to Sydney and went the opposite. So I went full primal, which that was really interesting because I ate a lot of meat and fat. So avocado, olive oil, nothing that was processed. And I lost about 1.5% of body fat every week for about 2 months. So my body just responded to different foods. So you figure it out, ease into it, reintroduce foods. For me, I just recommend you don't go back to the way you were eating before. Change it, smaller meals. Maybe just take a little peek into intermittent fasting too. The benefits of that, especially for women, if you're approaching middle age as well. It's the lifespan work of Dr. David Sinclair. Have a look at him. He's an Aussie guy, so he does amazing work in longevity. His views on intermittent fasting are really interesting.